IMG 1300 and WPHY Channel 25 are proud to present In the Public Interest. Each week, we explore a new topic of interest for you, the public. We now join our host live from the WIMG studios.
Good evening and welcome to In the Public Interest. You're listening to WIMG AM 1300. It's the stellar award-winning WIMG 1300. If you're listening to us on the World Wide Web, it's WIMG1300.com. And if you're watching us on TV, you're watching us at WPHY. So thanks for joining us tonight. My name's Jean Shippos, and I'm your host. And I'm delighted to welcome two gentlemen here tonight. Elliot Dennis. Welcome, Elliot. Thank you for joining me. And Ed Reardon. Hi, Ed. Thank you.
How you doing?
Now, you're going to be surprised, but Elliot and Ed are lifelong stutterers. And you're going to say, now, why did you invite them to this radio show? Well, amazingly, they faced and conquered stuttering, and you would never know that they were stutterers. And I am totally fascinated by this because I had no idea what a stutterer went through. And when I say lifelong, Ed, you told me into your 40s.
Yes.
Elliot, you said into your 30s.
Yes, and I'm still a stutterer. I just have it under control.
So you're in remission.
Yeah, long remission.
Long remission. So, Ed, how old were you when you realized you were a stutterer? Or that something, did you know it was stuttering or just knew something was wrong?
Okay. Probably around the age of 5, I guess, when I started school and I couldn't give my name when I was called on, and I just really couldn't speak. It was, I didn't know what was happening, and really there wasn't anybody around that could tell me what was happening. So as a stutterer, you go through life not speaking because you can't speak. So it's not a matter of me asking somebody what's wrong. I was waiting for people to tell me what was wrong, and that didn't happen.
And I imagine people talk about bullying now. I imagine that had to be awful for a young child.
I guess it was. It wasn't that bad in school. I never felt that bad in school, but with your friends, you know, there was always remarks, and you just had to avoid the fights that you used to get into over it. But
and how did your parents respond to this? What did they do to help you?
well, my father's sister, my aunt, was a terrible stutterer. So when my father saw me going through the same thing, I could see the look in his eye where, oh my God, here's the same thing again, you know. And he didn't know what to do because my aunt didn't know what to do. My mother only knew, possibly from somebody who told her that he needs to rest. So I'd be called in from play after school very early and put to bed. Hopefully that would help.
And you told me
about
this
all.
wonderful story about she dragged you to a chiropractor. Somebody said that a chiropractor would cure you?
Yeah, well, being in a Catholic school, they had no speech therapy. So one of the nuns in the 7th grade decided that, I don't know, maybe someone told her that a chiropractor would help. So we went to the chiropractor. He massaged my neck. It felt very good, but I was still a stutterer.
And at that time, nobody knew how to treat this. They didn't know what to do.
I guess there was speech therapists available, but I don't think anybody had the real answer because a lot of the professionals who wrote the books were stutterers themselves, and you'd think if they could cure themselves, somebody would have an answer.
And Elliot, you were 5, you said? Was
No,
your
I was
first
8
day of
years
school?
old.
Oh, you were 8?
Yes, and I was in a play, The Fruit Man. And I remember struggling with my lines. So they gave a few of my lines away to somebody else, and I still struggled with what I had left. Then I remember in the third grade, the first day, when the teacher had everybody up to the front of the room to give them their name, I couldn't get my name out. And the kids were very cruel, started laughing, asking me if the cat has my tongue. And that's when I realized that I stuttered. It was strange. It was usually under a stressful situation.
And how did your parents treat you? What did they do for you to get you help?
Well, the first thing my mother did was to take me to a psychiatrist. They didn't know where the stuttering emanated from, and neither did I, and neither did the psychiatrist, it turns out. There was an incident that I had when I was about 4 years old on New Year's Day, when I was walking around the house with a noisemaker. And when I opened the door, my grandmother walked in, and she had a big stomach and walked right into me, and the noisemaker went down my throat, and I got a splinter. So it was bleeding, and they took me to the doctor. After the psychiatrist examined me, he told my mother that I hated my grandmother because of that incident. And that'll be $20, please. But it did not help
But
my
it didn't cure
stuttering.
the stuttering.
And I guarantee you, I loved my grandmother a lot.
And you were also telling me another horror story about how you couldn't get help, so they diagnosed you as emotionally disturbed.
That's what they did in those years. They didn't know why a person stuttered. So they thought that I stuttered because I was emotionally disturbed. When the truth of the matter is, I was emotionally disturbed because I stuttered. And hopefully they look at it that way now.
You both told me some amazing things, the things that I never would have thought of. You couldn't order from a menu.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Couldn't speak on a phone. It was you would be stressed for various things or for various people. As I said to you earlier, it's like stage fright, 24/7. Okay, so where the situation was, it might be okay sometimes because you weren't stressed, so your vocal cords were open to speak, and other times you were just locked up. You couldn't get any words out. It's and not knowing what Elliot said, how people thought of us. When I was 16, I heard of this school in New York for stutterers. Elliot knows the name of it already. He went to the same school, not at the same time I did.
Oh my gosh.
So I went over there. Nobody knew I went because it was a secret. You know, I was a secret person then. So I went over, and I saw for the first time a lot of people that stuttered. I thought it was just me. And what you had to do to be interviewed, you had a Rorschach test. Now, they give you a Rorschach test to see if you're mentally okay, you know? I mean, that's what people did then. They associated stuttering with a mental problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not mental at all, it was just stage fright.
Yeah, tell us, Elliot, what causes stuttering? What is that? What causes it? It's not genetic. It's not.
Yes, it is.
It is
Yes.
genetic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because a lot of us have relatives that
Yeah, see,
stutter.
Oh.
And we have a propensity to place the tension from everyday stress onto our vocal cords. So the vocal cords lock up, and we try to break through that lock and try to speak without any air coming through. Wendell Johnson, years ago, he was a speech therapist. He said that stuttering is nothing more than people trying to speak while their vocal cords are locked. And when you think about that, that's exactly what it is. If a stutterer would stop and relax and let his vocal cords relax and then start to speak, he probably wouldn't stutter. But because of the urgency and the stressful situation they're up against, they try to force it out. And that is the stuttering itself. What we've learned to do through this method taught by Martin Schwartz is the airflow technique, where we let out a little air out of our mouth before every phrase, so the vocal cords are ready to vibrate. Once they're ready to vibrate, you're good to go as a fluent person. But if you try to speak while your vocal cords are in a laryngeal spasm, as the doctor calls it, you're going to stutter. You can't speak.
So do you think to this day you are still stutterers, that if you didn't follow this methodology you would stutter? There's no way anybody would be able to tell now that either of you stutter.
Well, we're not stressed now. I'm completely.
You're on the radio. What do you mean you're not stressed?
It doesn't matter, you know. It just doesn't matter. It's what we overcame. Point by point, when we were practicing, we would practice on the telephone, and we would call up 800 numbers, which were free then, and start off by very slow, very childish type speaking, and then hang up, call another one, to break that barrier that the operator was in charge of you.
Mm-hmm.
So when two people speak, there's usually one a little bit more than the other. You know, one feels a little superior sometimes, and sometimes they feel inferior. When the stutterer feels inferior, he's in trouble. He or she is in trouble.
And I know, Elliot, you told me it was a nightmare even going to the store, that you would take your wife to the store with you so your wife could deal with the people in the store, the clerks and everybody, so you didn't have to talk to them.
Right, especially when I had to order a pizza or something. Like if they told me number 61, then my wife had to go with me to pick it up. But if they told me number 8, I could go myself because I didn't stutter on 8.
So there are certain words that you can say and certain words that you would stutter on, and you knew that.
Yes, you scanned
That's
ahead.
how you coped.
Yeah.
This is absolutely amazing to me. And I know we want to talk about Dr. Martin F. Schwartz. Elliot, you said he changed your life because you found a book called Stuttering Solved.
Yes.
And I thought it was fascinating that the two of you found him through different means, and as a result of going to him, you found each other and have been lifelong friends as a result.
Yes, because he had an agency where he had all the names of the individuals that he treated. So one day, Eddie gave me a call. He got my name from Dr. Schwartz, and he asked me if I had a practice group. And I said, well, yeah, why don't you come over? And when he came over, we had a group. And it grew from there. And we even started a foundation, the International Foundation for Stutterers, which was a very successful means of broadcasting a viable speech technique to a lot of people.
How long was that? How long did you run that foundation?
Well, I think we had it from about 1981 till about 88. We were on the United Way list, and then as the people needed the therapy less and less, we lost members that way. You know, when
because they improved.
Right. You know, when you have a
followed
headache.
the process. Yeah.
When you have a headache and you're looking for an aspirin, once your headache disappears, you stop looking for that aspirin.
Right. So, well, we're going to come back in a minute. We're going to talk about Dr. Martin F. Schwartz. You said he's listening tonight, so you can say hello to him.
Well, I hope so.
And Stuttering Solved. And I think it's important that you tell some of the young people who might be listening or their parents where they should go, what they should do, and that it's not a hopeless situation anymore. So let's take a little break, and we'll be back in a minute.
Our democracy is a government of the people for the people. Let's keep it that way. Vote in the midterm elections on November 4th. Get registered. Learn the issues. Cast your vote. It's that simple. This is a public service announcement from WIMG.
Have you heard that high school graduates make $10,000 a year more than dropouts, according to the U.S. Census Bureau? Well, finally getting your high school diploma is easy, online with any of our accredited partner schools. Don't settle for a test. Today's colleges and employers are looking for more. Instead, get matched with a real accredited online high school now by calling this number. 800-215-6819. Again, 800-215-6819. Work at your own pace, from the comfort of your own home, and get a real high school diploma. Special offers are available, but you need to call right now to enroll. 800-215-6819. 800-215-6819. 800-215-6819. Call right now. Learn how to get your high school diploma online. 800-215-6819. 800-215-6819.
Welcome back to In the Public Interest. You're listening to WIMG AM 1300. I'm Jean Shippos, and I'm so glad that you're back with us. I'm talking to Elliot Dennis and Ed Reardon, and believe it or not, we are speaking rather fluently about stuttering. Both Ed and Elliot were stutterers, and it breaks my heart because I picture growing up what you had to face and how difficult it was for you in a time when people didn't recognize stuttering or attributed it to something else, to mental illness or to emotional illness. But you found Martin Schwartz. So, Elliot, why don't you tell us about him, about Dr. Schwartz?
Well, the reason that I went to him was I was working on the loading dock for Kodak in Dayton, New Jersey. And one day on my way back from the loading dock, I noticed that there was a job offer for an in-house position as a customer service rep.
How old were you at the time?
35.
Wow.
Oh, no, 34, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And
all this time you were coping with this.
I was coping with
Yes.
it. I knew that I had a high IQ, and I knew that I was capable of doing more things than loading trucks and packing orders for Kodak. So I went into the office to make an appointment for an interview, and the manager said that he wouldn't even interview me because of my speech impediment. It was so obvious, and customer service rep was 80% on the telephone. So I got very emotional as I walked back to the loading dock, and that weekend my wife and I went to the library to find something that would help me. That's when I found the book Stuttering Solved. And I made her check it out because I was too embarrassed to be associated with any book that said Stuttering Solved. And I read it, and my goodness, if I wasn't in that book, how did this guy know me? He really did his homework. And I waited a while, and I wrote a letter, and he wrote back that I should call him, just like Ed. And that is the
Like the
worst,
kiss of death for a
that's like
stutterer,
right?
right?
Yeah. So I finally, when nobody was home, I decided to call, and I made an appointment to get an evaluation. And I went to his workshop 2 days, 8 hours each day, and then for a year and a half you mail in practice tapes and they monitor it. I want to tell you, the night that I went home from his workshop, I was able to speak with my sister and my mother fluently for the first time in my life.
Wow.
So we were all very emotional, and I've been very motivated to continue this. Me and Eddie joined Toastmasters.
That I find amazing, that you joined a public, internationally recognized speaking organization.
So do we.
And you give, yes, yeah, I guess you do. And you give speeches.
Well, I didn't set out to join Toastmasters, let me tell you. I said to myself, if I could just use the phone, if I could order food that I want when I want to order, I'm happy. I don't want to go any further than that. Those two things would free me up. So as you start knocking down all these stressful situations, like a waitress in a diner, someone on the other side of a phone, and you get better at that, you realize that if you stop there, the demons will come back. You know, you have to keep knocking down things that you feel stress you. It's not the people stressing you. You're the one that's stressing yourself.
How
because
did
of
you
certain
find Dr.
people.
Schwartz? How did he help you?
Well, I was 40, and in my jobs, I was getting into areas where I had to speak more. So, you know, the pressure was on, and I was going to try to see a hypnotist or something. And just at that time, my wife saw Dr. Schwartz on a TV show, What's My Line? And she said, yeah, this guy looks like he can cure you. So, again, I wrote to Schwartz. He answered back, call me, which is what I did to Elliot. And I really hated him at that point, because to get in a phone booth and call anybody, it was panic. I mean, there was no way out of it. So I did that, and he was the first guy that the only guy that told me, when I asked him, I said, when I'm in a room by myself, I don't stutter. When I walk out and meet someone, I freeze. I can't get the words out. So he says, well, you get stressed, your vocal cords lock, you can't get air through your vocal cords, therefore you can't speak. I said something I can't say on the radio. I said, is that it? And he said, that's it. He said, now you have to practice. Now you have to practice getting rid of the demons. And from that point on, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work to get to that point. But to think back, being in school, like a day in school, a day that you're going to school starts out, you get up in the morning, you're kind of sick because you know what's going to happen. So you come down, you're not hungry because you don't want to eat, because you got a headache, all because of what you see that day, every day, every single day. So you plan it, you scan where you're going to be, what subjects, are they going to call on me, what do I do to not get called, and you do that every single day.
That's just heartbreaking.
It's not
it
fun.
It really is heartbreaking.
It's not fun.
So let's move on with that. Now that we're on that, it really is. It's devastating. So somebody's listening and their child stutters, or there's a child listening who says, oh my gosh, that's what I go through.
Yeah.
What do you tell them, Elliot? What do you tell them?
Well,
What should they do?
first of all, if you're very young, like 3 years old, 4 years old, there is a good chance that by the time you reach 8 years old, you won't stutter anymore, like a 70% chance. But if you still have the secondaries when you're 8 years old, there's a very good chance that you will be a stutterer, and you need to do something about it. And there are speech pathologists out there who know how to treat people. I believe that your voice, when you find it, you have to treat it like a musical instrument. There are techniques that you can be taught to allow your vocal cords to relax and to be able to vibrate whenever you want. Strangely enough, there was a book I read called Reading Aloud that gave you a technique for being an actor on the stage, and you had to raise your voice without putting more pressure on your vocal box. And it said to let a little air out of your mouth before you speak, and then use diaphragmatic breathing to make sure that there's air going over your vocal cords. And really, in essence, that is part and parcel.
It's teaching yourself how to breathe.
How to breathe and speak at the same time.
Wow.
But the answer comes from practice, practice, practice. You can know what to do, but if you don't put in the hours, and we put in so many hours. When we first met, we started to go to 4 meetings a week. And these weren't local meetings. We lived in New Jersey. We went to Brooklyn, to Manhattan, to the 5 towns in Long Island, all over the place to practice, practice, practice. We'd come home at 2 and 3 in the morning and wake up at 6 o'clock, refreshed. It was just incredible because we were so motivated.
Yeah, because you were so motivated.
Right.
Didn't you say also that Dr. Schwartz has tapes? There are tapes out. There's CDs or something available.
No,
yeah,
I think
I thought you said that.
DVD.
He has a
I think that he
DVD
makes
out.
available.
So if anybody's interested, the person and thank you, Dr. Schwartz. We know you're listening. Dr. Martin F. Schwartz. He has a DVD out to help stutterers, and it's his book is called Stuttering Solved.
I have an autographed copy, and I'm not selling it.
And both Ed and Elliot can attest to how he changed their lives. You heard them tonight, how beautifully they speak. In fact, what amazes me, you joined Toastmasters. Elliot, did you compete at also? Elliot, I know Elliot competed in Toastmasters.
I stayed to do, as you start off, you give a first icebreaker speech, and then you go up the ladder in speeches. And I stayed there till I did like 5 speeches, and I was very busy in my job, so I backed off there.
But Elliot stayed forever, 35 years, Elliot? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know.